You had a monumental moment at the start of this week.
I did.
That was really empowering. Can you shed some light on that?
So I wouldn't call it a identity crisis, but that's certainly what it felt like. So I asked the question, who am I? I'd been doing a lot of soul searching for a few years now. It's been maybe like 7 years of self-discovery and figuring myself out. But there was something about the start of this week that I needed to sit down and just listen to what was kind of going on internally.
Where did this come from?
Well, I don't know. I think, what do you mean?
Like what prompted you to ask that question in the first place?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I can't even remember. I can just remember having this, like, literally my eyes were like bulging and I was like, oh my gosh, who am I? Who is Yuzha? I was actually having a bit of a breakdown, but I grounded myself during the process. Maybe
we should provide a little bit of context then.
Sure.
So that we did actually do a recording for last week to post episode 15 last week, but we also had some technical difficulties, and it was a really good conversation that we had, but we lost the audio for it essentially, so we weren't able to post it.
Yeah.
We were also at a point where we're doing a lot of experimenting with sort of ideas and what we wanted to do going forward with Enerhia and with Nuwant's podcast as well. Yeah. And so toying around with all that, we started having ideas about how we can create something from the ground up going forward from here. And so not rely on Enerhia just being purely a theta service that you provide for people.
There's a lot more than that.
Yeah, like sort of what it's actually about, how that is linked to the podcast, and just any other sort of service we want to provide, any other way we want to be creative.
Yeah.
We really went through that last weekend, and I think that kind of put us in a bit of a... it kind of spun us around a little bit when it came to sort of our long-term goals and even our short-term planning for what we're kind of going to do. So it kind of made us stop and assess a little bit more what we were doing and why, and if we had timeframes or anything like that to go by. And so I think we were already in that space then of openness and like attempting to create something.
Because I think we were putting too much energy into creating and thinking that we had to keep doing, keep recording, keep just every single day doing something, posting, instead of actually stepping back and seeing the bigger picture and what we're working toward, and just honing in on, okay, what is going to ground me in each step of the way. And then when I started to think that way, I began to think about what did ground me, and I couldn't really find anything. There wasn't anything that I was really certain of. So I started, You
were reading that book, right?
Yeah.
So didn't that also, that also prompted this too,
I
didn't it?
began reading that.
Yeah. So what's the book?
The Language of Emotions by Carla McLaren. Oh God. Shit. Been brilliant book. It was so funny because every chapter I go through and every emotion that she's talking about, I went through that emotion and I was feeling it. And when she speaks about emotions, she talks about them flowing in and out of your life naturally. That's just what they do. It's part of life. There is no emotion that you need to that we need to suppress or to avoid, or to, sometimes like don't feel angry or don't feel, that just tucks it away somewhere else deeper in our subconscious and unconscious minds. So we don't get to deal with it until maybe later something pops up and then we have an outburst and then we can't understand it. And then we go through this whole, identity crisis, which I did. If
you're like aware enough,
if you're aware,
conscious enough of what's going on in your body.
So, because I knew that I had to have this conversation with myself, and I reckon it's been about a year. When you began to ask these philosophical questions, when you started delving into philosophy, I knew that I really wanted to. I should have been doing it at that time, but I wasn't ready, I don't think. So it's 1 year later, and
Well, that's the fertile ground. So that was sort of the backdrop for, I guess, the foundation for you being in a position to start to ask those questions. Was we were asking questions about what we wanted to do going forward.
Yeah.
Then you're reading this book that's really opening your eyes up and providing a really cool perspective on emotions and the way that we deal with emotions. So that was really interesting.
Yeah.
And then so from you reading that, because I was at work and you were texting me, like having a mental breakdown just about saying, oh my God, I'm questioning so much about everything. What kind of questions were you asking?
The first one was like, who am I? Which is, if you really understand what you're asking and you're in that space, it is the deepest question, because being spiritual and having had that experience before, it separates you from everything. It separates you from your spirit and your body and your identity here. And I'm just like, oh my God, who am I?
Yeah.
And then it just kind of kept spiraling. Like, what do I like? What do I value? What do I believe? Was that even true? And I had to go back to when I was born and relive my entire life to know the patterns and what was happening and what beliefs were mine and what I was like, what suppressed me and what triggered me up until this point. Because every time I get close or inspiration to something I really want to do, or when I get an idea and I get really excited about it, it gets to a point where I stop and I block. And I think this is exactly the same point where I hit and I'm like, all right, I get it now. I gotta sit down with my emotions and listen to what's coming up. So I allowed all these questioning, and I didn't let it, because I was this close from just going down into like sadness and depression and
there's so much in there, because I've had a similar experience, but I'll just unpack this a little bit first. So you were reading this book, it opened you up a little bit and you've gone, oh, okay, there's something in my emotions, and then maybe you followed that tangent and then that took you to this, like, this is this emotion that I'm experiencing is there for this reason. And so then you start questioning other sort of constructs that you've built up around yourself,
everything,
and then you start questioning those constructs, and that leads ultimately to you saying, well, who am I? What makes me up? What is it that makes me, and what has been created around me? What environment have I created around myself? And is it real?
Is it true?
Yeah.
Is it true to me and what I actually believe in, and do I align with that? And a lot of it was no. That's why I was freaking out, because like, oh my God, who was that? Who was living? It was terrifying. But having been doing like grounding work, mindfulness, and understanding to stay calm and grounded, I knew that I was safe. This was just a moment that I was having. This was a pivotal moment that I need to really explore, and that this is natural to have all these feelings come up and this fear as well.
So what happened?
Well, I took a deep breath and a nap, and then I just kept going. I resumed and tried to understand from, okay, this is how it was. Now, what I can choose now how I want to. I can either blame my past, blame that version of me, or I can use it as fuel to guide me forward. What doesn't work for me anymore? What is standing in my way? It's me, usually, because I'm the one, or usually it's us that is standing in front of us. When you can't get anywhere, it's your fear that's standing in front of you. Don't go there, it's too dangerous. You don't know what's out there. It's the unknown. It's curiosity, it's inspiration. There's so much beauty on the other side of it, and I knew that. And it's just something that these seeds have been planted over the last year, of everything that I've learned, all the books that I've read, all this stuff that I was doing, meditating, all these little seeds that were planted along the way have all just kind of bloomed and being like, it's okay, you're safe. This is the time now you can move forward and move past it. And I guess and then I kept reading the book. I was like, right, next chapter. And she talks about sadness and how to just listen to your body, just listen to the sadness and what it's telling you, because it's you. That sadness is you. It's telling you a story of what's going on and what's in the past or what you're sad about.
Is it like you completely go down that unraveling of all the emotions? It's like when you stopped and in that moment you started looking into yourself or paying more attention to yourself. It was almost like you were unraveling this like web of string, and that string was your emotions.
Oh yeah.
And when you started to do that, was there a narrative or something of emotions that was being portrayed to you, and you were finally actually starting to see it for what it was? I was going to say, like, because this whole time, you know, you've been trying to identify what's been happening internally and come to terms with it, put a face on it, acknowledge it, and let it be. So how is what you've been doing up until this point any different to that moment when you were having that sort of crisis?
So I've noticed that it's like my old self is still alive in me, and my old patterns, and they're very good at convincing me that I'm doing the right thing. But I knew that I wasn't really facing what I was, like, I could visualize, but I wasn't really connecting to the visualization. I was just visualizing that, okay, this person's in front of me, or I'm picturing my emotion there separate from me, and I've like taken it out of me like it's not mine, and I've let it go.
So you've like created that little package, that little emotional package, and you've put it externally. So so it's like your ego's created it, and that's that. Like illusion, it's like an illusion that you're dealing with.
It hasn't actually left me. It's still in me, but it's convinced me. Like that's how intelligent our mind is, and how intelligent our bodies are. It can actually, it's protecting me though. Like I can't be angry at it because it thinks it's doing the right thing for me. So it's having a relationship, a good relationship with your ego, and understanding how to talk to it. Because you can yell at it all you want, it's just going to crawl more and more into the corner and just suck everything in with it. So I would rather have it sit next to me and me hold its hand saying, it's going to be okay. Let's do this together.
But you didn't know that. You didn't know what that meant until you had this experience. When you actually saw it for what it was, and you saw that the layers kind of stripped away. And then you were really struggling because you didn't know what was real and what was
I had a
ego.
moment. Yes, I had a moment where it was terrifying, because it's your existence, it's your identity here, and then it's your spirit, and it's like, is that real even, or is this real? And it's really, really uncomfortable. But something happened, and I just took a breath, because I know that that's like my first, when I'm giving anyone any kind of, not advice, but guidance, I say just breathe, take a deep breath in. So now every time I'm in some sort of emotion, I just take a breath and I listen to it and just keep moving forward. But allowing the emotion, so instead of separating it and like visualizing it in front of me, I now I connect with it. I allow it to flow up like water, kind of like a waterfall, but flowing up and out of my body, or just through me, but connecting with it and listening to it and what it's actually telling me, because it's very intelligent. It knows, and it's coming up because it's telling me something. And when we're in pain, or when we're feeling any emotion, it's just telling us something. You're angry about something. This is what you're angry about. You got to let it flow through you, instead of not, like, sometimes we get angry that we're angry, or angry that we're frustrated, or angry that we're sad.
Like,
oh my God, I'm just so like
meta emotional.
And it doesn't do anything except make you more angry, and it suppresses the reason, whereas it's just going to find a way to come up again. Do
you want to share anything that actually came up? Just so it might be easier to paint the picture.
There's so much that came up. There's just the one thing that has stopped me from moving forward. The one thing that really unlocked me was I was suppressed as a child from kind of moving into my curiosity, and it was really interesting because I didn't want to believe it, because I was always told you can do whatever you want, you can be whatever you're meant to be, and I was always encouraged to follow my curiosity. However, there's something that happened. I was living in a routine from when I was a baby. We had a community where we had events to go to 3 times a week at least, and we were in the same community, and this if you did something outside of it, people noticed, and it was scary because you didn't know what the large community would think of you. So, and it's just this simple little thing and it's not, no one's like, I'm not going to blame it. I like that we had that security, that family when we were growing up, because we had the friends and family and everything was good. But sometimes, like, our curiosity wants to know just wants to see something else.
Yeah.
You know, that's just natural. We want to see more, or but we stop ourselves because we are afraid of criticism or being judged or being seen even. Because when you even step out, people will see that and they'll look at you and they'll watch you, and for good or bad reasons, depending. So I noticed that I actually took that with me every time I wanted to explore my creativity. There was a barrier there that actually was like, it's scary, it's dangerous, don't go out there. Don't go out there because you're going to get hurt, or no one that supports you or has supported you is going to be there. You're going to be on your own. You're going to be alone. So it was terrifying. So
was that your own ego telling you that, or was that sort of like a conditioning that you experienced?
It was a conditioning, because I was going through a routine, and because I was like, what? I'm so creative, but I know that I've never hit my potential. Could never hit my potential.
It's expression. It seems like your expression was kind of stifled at crucial moments. Is that sort of what you feel like happened?
I feel like that's what happened. It's the only, like, and it's not a bad thing. I like that I've figured it out and that I've had this experience, because I'm actually more free now. I actually feel more comfortable and ready to even explore what I can do with theatre and with other things, with art. And I'm really excited to sit down. Like, there's something that has kind of shifted. And I like that I've noticed that, because I'm so grateful for my upbringing. I love it. I love that I had such a safe place to take care of me. And now it's like, I want to trust that I live in a even bigger community, the human race, where I can still feel safe, and I can still feel like I have a purpose and a meaning and a place in it.
Yeah.
And then bring it back to community. So, not everyone has that. A lot of people we're happy to stay in where it's safe and exciting and what fulfills us. It didn't fulfill me, and I'm moving into other realms, other areas, because that's where my mind and my expression's taking me.
Yeah.
That's where my curiosity is taking me. I have to follow it, otherwise I don't feel satisfied. And that's just me personally.
Oh, definitely. I don't think that's anything unique to yourself. Like, curiosity is probably unique to everybody in their own way. They have their own curiosity, or lack thereof. I feel like when you have the freedom to be able to explore that curiosity, because it also shapes your expression too, because it helps light up new interests and hobbies and things like that. So when you have the freedom to be able to follow that curiosity, and you develop as a result of what you find along the way, then your expression will change, and your ability to express yourself is going to change.
Yeah.
So when you kind of find yourself unable to explore that curiosity because you might not have the freedom to do so, then you don't get to develop as quickly. I think definitely from my own experience, I developed...
When did you experience that?
Like what you experienced?
Yeah.
Like philosophically speaking, like that real sort of stripping down of all those barriers. Well, I think I think the seeds for me were going through some family trauma, I think, and me trying to establish who I was in that. And it was the same sort of deal like what you said, where it's like your ego creates something and then projects it. And then when you start to look for answers, you see that projection. And so you don't actually see what it is. It's like when you look in a mirror, your mirror is reflecting something, but your mirror isn't generating what it's reflecting. It's simply just reflecting an image that's in front of it.
Yeah.
And it's like when your ego creates something, it's like it puts that image in the mirror. And when you go within and try and find some answers, you're looking at the reflection. You're not looking at what's casting it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's sort of I hope, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
But so I think in doing that, the good thing with that is you're still identifying something. You're still identifying things, but because you're not quite at the point where you're touching and you're having an actual interaction with what's creating the image, you don't get down to that. You don't strip that, and you don't actually start to see it for what it is. So I was asking a lot of questions, and I was finding a lot of answers, which was really nice. And so that helped me to get through. And it did help to establish a kind of foundation for me.
Did you find that you were a bit terrified at one point? When I said that I kind of separated myself from my identity and my spiritual self, and you had that disconnect. Did you feel that at all, or what was your version of it?
God, it's been a little while. I've gotten so used to being like inquisitive and being unsure, or not being unsure, but being okay with not knowing, being okay with, I don't know much, but I'm going to do the best that I can to go out there and find it and be open to it.
Sure.
But I think for me, how it developed me getting interested in philosophy, because it was ultimately when I started reading philosophy, that's what opened me up. And I'm reading stuff like, holy crap, like this is, I'm reading these words, I've never thought about it, but it's true, or it's fascinating, and I can see this person's logic, because philosophy being about, it's search for truth, and first principles, and then logic that flows on from those principles. You're trying to establish some kind of basic elements of existence itself. And so, when you can really engage with that, you have to try. For me, if I'm reading something, I need to put myself in that position, in like the similar sort of context of what it is that I'm reading, so I can understand it, but I can also take on for myself what it is that I'm reading and make it relevant to me, so that I can learn something and grow and develop from it. I read Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, which was really good. Because I was going through that point reading spiritual stuff, I branched into psychology a little bit, and then that led me to Jordan Peterson. And then from Jordan Peterson, because he, in that book, he quoted and referred to philosophers a lot.
Yeah.
And so I got really interested in just any of that stuff. It sort of just opened my eyes a little bit, or just sparked a little bit of that curiosity I was talking about. And I'm like, let's sort of follow this train. And then when I thought of philosophy, like the first book that jumped to mind was Republic by Plato.
Sure.
So I went and got that, and I read it, and I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing. Like it wasn't even like, I'd always had a bit of a mind for politics, and I paid attention to it a little bit, but I didn't think much deeper than sort of what you get on the surface level. But when I read that, and it broke down like the actual construction of particular regimes or ideas behind like actions, political actions, I was like, wow, like there's just, everything has a foundation. Everything in existence has some kind of base from which it springs forth. And we see the outcome or the product of it. And that's what we engage with. But we don't necessarily pay any attention to where it's come from or what principle has fueled its existence. And so that sort of, when I read that, it started to open me up a little bit. And then we went away with a couple of friends and some family members of yours. And one of the blokes there, he was a philosophy student at whatever university, and so he loves that sort of field. So I said, yeah, I've read Republic. I felt like a little like
you've read one
a little, yeah, I read huddled in the corner like little baby Yoda holding Republic.
How did that go?
Oh, we had some really good conversations, and the thing about, because he's obviously been doing this or thinking philosophically like that for a longer period of time, and for me it was totally new. So for me to be able to engage with that and have that conversation with someone who is that way inclined and has more experience in that, it was really awesome. And the thing I loved about it was that he challenged me and what I believed and why. And that was a really crucial moment for me with my development, because he made me feel really uncomfortable, because he was challenging why I thought a certain way. Like he says that he's agnostic, so he doesn't not believe in God, but he doesn't believe in God. He's waiting for the right set of circumstances to prove one way or the other. And for me, I believe that there is something, but in him questioning that, I realized in that moment I actually don't have the answer for myself. And so this is what I was talking about when I'm reading something. I've learnt that I need to figure out how I can resonate personally with what I'm reading. So if I'm reading a book if I am reading some philosophy book, how can I relate what I'm reading to what I'm experiencing in real life? So if I'm reading, if they're highlighting a particular point, where can I see that point being made in my life in this moment? So that I can make it tangible and I can touch it and I can see it. And then I can start to think more clearly or relate to, okay, this makes sense now because I can see it and I can feel it in my own reality. So when I was reading all those spiritual books and getting that spiritual idea of myself and of existence, they were someone else's words that I was reading, and they were resonating with me on a level because I'm like, this sounds really good, I really like this. But I don't think I'd actually established for myself at that point how it was relevant to me in my life. And so when he started asking questions, I was kind of like, this is the logic, or these are the thoughts that I've had from what I've read and from what I've experienced up until this point. But because I hadn't gone any deeper than that for myself personally, it started to actually penetrate to a very vulnerable spot for me. And the reason I was vulnerable was because I had nothing at that point. You know,
that didn't bother you though. You actually got really, like, even like when we talked about it after, you were actually more curious about learning where you actually sat with things. You actually wanted to learn more.
Yeah.
So what I would have done would have been like, oh my God, I'm so stupid, I don't know anything, and I would have just gone down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Whereas with you, you were more open to, you were accepting that you didn't know, and you went to look for the answers.
Yeah, well,
that was the path that you went on.
He recommended a couple of books and a couple of philosophers, one of them being Friedrich Nietzsche, and he's you know, not anti-God, but he's definitely not religious. A lot of his stuff is aimed at sort of disparaging the idea of God and how we humans kind of use the construction of a God or a deity or whatever as a way of externalizing our power to something else, or putting the responsibility on something else as opposed to taking it for ourselves.
Sure.
I read Thus Spoke Zarathustra, and that was a really, really awesome read. And I didn't agree with a lot of it, but again, it's like, I don't agree with something, but I didn't know why I didn't agree with it. And it was the same when I was having that discussion with him. I'm like, I don't agree with you, but I can't exactly articulate why I don't agree with you.
Yeah.
And so that was probably the biggest point for me. And then reading Nietzsche, Zarathustra, I was like, okay, all right, I need to do something now. I started to have those sort of questions. I think at that point I was having those questions like what you were having, like, who am I? What do I actually believe? What is real? What have I experienced right now? How can I tie my life together? And like on a principle basis, not just like, okay, this is what I think, and that's that. Because I found, especially from that moment, I realized, I actually comprehended the vulnerability in that position. When you just think something, or you just hold an opinion on something, and when that's
nothing to back it up.
Yeah, when that's not supported by something, then all it takes is a well-placed question, and it completely unravels. Yeah, completely unravels you. And so I learnt from that moment. No, okay, I need to, if I'm going to have a strong opinion, or if I'm going to be curious about something, I need to learn exactly what is making up my thoughts, or what's created my opinion or my stance on something. And so I learnt from that, definitely going forward. If I don't know enough about something, but I'm going to weigh in on a topic, I'll preface it with, I haven't looked too much into it. Yep. Or based on what I know at this point in time, this is the sort of logic that I use.
Be transparent.
Just have that bit of transparency. Yeah. And so, that was a big lesson.
It's also being honest to yourself as well. I think I've found that it's terrifying being honest with myself with a lot of things. But now I'm thinking, like, it's the most helpful thing to do for yourself and to keep growing and learning. It's like, I want to be honest that I don't know all the answers, that I'm not perfect, that I'm not this or I'm not that. Not that I ever thought I was perfect, but like when I stuff up, and I'm just like, oh my God, I can't do it. And you've only given it one shot, you know, especially with like painting. I hate acrylic paints, but I didn't give it enough. I nearly quit, I reckon, the first few tries. I'm like, nah, I don't know how to do it. I don't like it. It's uncomfortable, obviously. This is the first time I've ever tried it. Yeah. Just like anything. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think when I was in that sort of limbo, like, okay, what do I actually believe? Why do I believe it? It was just that constant why? Like, why do I think this way? What compels me to think this way? Why is it important for me to have this thought? Like, really asking all those questions centered on the one idea.
I remember this. I think I know where this started.
For you or for me?
For me,
right.
This week.
Okay.
You know how I was talking to you about questioning and how I always found it really difficult to ask questions?
Yeah.
And like, ever since I was little, like I really struggled in school. When the teachers asked us, does anyone have any questions? And people would raise their hands. I'm like, they've given us all the information. Like, I just trusted that they told us everything that we need to know in order to do the assignment or whatever we were doing. to ask anything else. And I was like, I went back. I was like, what was that? What was that? Like, I just didn't know what questions to ask. But it's because I didn't know what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
So
it was this, yeah.
This is what it was. I was like, what is it?
So
Because I'm like, I don't think it was just something before that. And I always struggled. I'm like, I don't know what questions to ask. I really struggle because there's so much that I want to learn, but I don't know what it is about those things that I want to know and learn about and apply to my life, because it's all interesting to me, just looking at it.
Yeah.
But what's specific to me that I need to know? And I don't.
Where do you start?
Where do I start? And it's like, if I knew myself, if I knew exactly what my purpose, not my purpose, but like where I was going, what direction I'm heading in, what my life kind of looks like, and now because I've done all that work, I know what I know where I'm going, but is that really where I want to go? And then you kind of keep asking those questions, whereas like, hang on, it doesn't make sense, because is that even true? Because knowing where I've been, I don't have any foundation. Was I actually following this outcome, or was it just an outcome that looks good? Is it something that I feel like I just should do because I like mindfulness, I have to go in that direction and be that certain way, and I have to appear that way to people when I'm talking to them, and just this idea of someone who would do this work, rather than connect with what it is that actually what I find curious and following that curiosity. And obviously I had that block that I blocked myself because I was so afraid of stepping out of who I was, or out of the normal with, and being seen, or even just jumping out of the circle a little bit and finding myself, which that's what happened when I went overseas.
Yeah.
I literally got a one-way ticket overseas because I'm like, I can't come back until I know who I am, which was like, I didn't even know what that meant. I was just like, I feel like I need to know who I am. And I remember a girl that I was working with at the time at Topshop was like, what do you mean? What do you mean you don't know who you are? And I'm like, I don't know, but that's why I'm going. And I don't know what it is about that place. I don't know. Everything's just falling into place. And it got me over there. And I learned a lot about myself at that point in time, what I needed at that point in time. And I've just taken it,
But you didn't quite get to that depth that you got to at the start of this week. That philosophical depth where you don't just question what makes me up. You question, why are you made up this way? Yeah. And what's fueling? Yeah.
Because I really struggled. I'm like, okay, well, what questions do I ask? And then I started asking questions, but I was like, what? I was like,
it's a headache.
I was so tired. I was drained. I was exhausted, and I was like, I need I'm like, you know what? I will have a nap, because this is heavy stuff. Questioning your existence. Like, I didn't think that. I'm like, I always knew that it was something heavy, but when you go through it and you feel it, and you are just in it, and you're understanding as well. I think that's what it is. When you're actually understanding what's happening, it becomes even more difficult.
Like I was saying, because there's a difference between hearing words or reading words and going, oh yeah, that sounds good, to actually understanding what you're reading and like comprehending the implications of what you're reading. Because you can read, like, even just listen to this and go, I can understand what they're saying, or I got no idea what they're saying, or you'd say it sounds good, or I can follow their logic and their reasoning. But there's a difference between just hearing it and going, I understand, but actually comprehending the implication and the depth of this existence that we have.
And the shock that you go through. I didn't think that... I thought I was ready to have this experience, which is really funny. I thought it was hilarious. I'm like, oh, Yuzha, you're just... Oh, my God. You're such a lost little soul, aren't you? The visualizations that were coming up were just... I was just like a little speck, and then it was like space, and then like my body was over there, and then my identity was over there, and then something out. Like we
need to do some DMT or something.
This is DMT. I feel like I don't need it. But yeah, I think it was actually understanding what was happening was probably the scariest part, but it was also really what's that?
Eye-opening.
Yeah, a nicer word. It was eye-opening to just have that. And see. I feel like separating myself and seeing myself in front of me in all these different parts, I feel like I can now put myself together a little bit more and understand myself, if that makes sense.
Because like I say, you've stopped resonating with the reflection, and you're you're interacting with the truth or the reality of Yuzha and what makes you up until this point in time.
Yeah. So I kept reading the book, and every single chapter, and I'm still reading it, every page, every exercise that she gives you to flow with your emotions, I'm feeling it, and it resonates with me. And she talks about grounding, and I'm interested in earthing now, just to center myself every time I'm feeling lost, or I'm feeling like when I'm at a barrier, that barrier that I'm so familiar with, I know how to just move the sign that I've put there that says no through road, or danger, or whatever it is. I know how I know that I'm going to be safe and taken care of. Yeah. And it's just reminding myself and reprogramming my mind to believe that it's safe and it's fun.
Did you have you like, so from this experience, I know for me when I went through it, and I know those feelings. I know what it's like to go, holy crap, I don't know anything. If I stop and I deconstruct my thoughts and I look at what's supporting them and there's nothing there, it's just this big blank space. Now all of a sudden I have to try and fill or discover a source or a root of my opinions and my experience, my existence, whatever. And so for me, that turned into me writing inward. That's why I wrote the book. That was me trying to reconcile my own base principles. So what do I operate from? What ideas do I have? How do I actually order my thoughts so that if I'm to have an opinion on something, or if I'm to experience something, you know, how do I go about breaking it down so that I can comprehend where it's coming from? Because that completely changed my point of view. So I no longer necessarily would hear a thought or hear an opinion or see something in front of me and just take it necessarily only for what it is. Now I tend to ask more deeper questions about what it is, because I want to understand it.
Yeah.
It's not me trying to be difficult or painful or controversial or anything. I'm not doing that. It's not me trying to undermine anything. It's just me going, okay, let me understand it a little bit more. Because when you can actually understand something and the foundation of it, what makes it up, you can appreciate it so much more. Yeah. But you kind of guard yourself against falling for bullshit or believing in an illusion. And I mean, obviously it's not something I do. I'm still only human. Like, you know, you don't do that with everything that sort of comes your way. And I've still fallen for bullshit. You know, I still, you know, take things that are nonsensical, and I've still gone, okay, this is real, and only to realize later, it was me being irrational. Because then I think what I've got to be careful of, and what we all have to be careful of, is if you're doing that, or if you hold an opinion strong enough that you feel like you have enough information to support it with, that you don't start to look to confirm it and be biased towards it. Okay, what am I seeing right now, and how does what I'm seeing fit into my view of the world? And I mean, it's good that you can do that, but you got to be careful that you allow what it is that you're trying to understand to be as it is, so that you don't just project your own ideas and your own beliefs onto what it is you're observing. You got to allow it to be separate and understand it in its own context. And then that way you can use that new information to enrich your experience, as opposed to projecting your experience onto it and actually totally missing the point of what it is that you're looking at. Anyway, that's me going off on a bit of a tangent. But so that changed the way I view things though. When I went through that and I wrote the book and I started to organize my ideas and how I look at things and how I approach things, that became something that was really important to me. How has this changed you going forward? Do you have any experience like that, or has it changed the way that you look at things now? Do you relate to me a little bit easier now? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. I think it's happening slowly, but more, instead of like expressing it through writing, like that was your way of expressing and understanding it. I'm connecting with my body and my thoughts. So I'm doing a lot of grounding and breathing, and wherever I am, and when I'm with people or when I'm thinking about people, I don't separate myself from it, but I'm paying attention to what my body is telling me. I'm listening to the messages that my frustration or my anger or my sadness or whatever it is that's coming up, I'm listening to it more than I ever really did. Usually I would just feel the emotion and be like, it's making me angry, and you're trying to get rid of it, and then you go do something or take a nap because you're so exhausted about being angry, or you just dissociate with it, or you could distract yourself, or avoid it.
Yeah.
And you go to something else, which usually is snacking for me. I make tea, or I get the almonds, you get up, you shake it a little bit and go outside, you water the plants when they don't need
It's like you're distracting yourself.
Distract yourself from the emotion, whereas it's not going to go anywhere. You're actually pushing it further down.
Because that's the thing, right? When you do that, you don't. Because you've distracted yourself. You've stopped experiencing it because you put your attention elsewhere.
Because you think it's a bad thing, right? Because it
Yeah.
feels bad in terms. It's not really that bad. It's an expression. It's an emotion. We are meant to have these emotions are communicators. They communicate with us for reasons, and they help us to understand what's going on within our bodies, and they're telling us this is how you're responding because of this belief or this habit or this pattern or this trigger. So when emotions come up now for me, I sit with them, although it's really, really uncomfortable sometimes. And I tried to, even like this week, I'm like, oh, it's really irritating. It's really irritating, but like, just go away. Like, you don't bother me that much. Just go away. But even just doing that, I was like, okay, yep, no, go. And then I lifted the book up and I just couldn't, I was not reading the words on the page. And I'm like, okay, time to sit with my emotions. And it was really hard, but I also went through, it's a cleansing. You cleanse yourself from things that come up. You allow them to flow through you so you can understand them. So then next time when they come through you again, you're not actually as triggered.
Yeah.
You know what to do. You know how to feel, and you know how to express it. You know, maybe just to take a deep breath. You know, maybe just go for a run or shake it out or whatever comes naturally.
Just allow the emotion to explain to you what's
that's it.
the
It's
source
just
of it.
listening to it, because it's your body. It's your body's memory telling you, and it's all the messages. It's just coming up to tell you something.
Yeah.
And often we think that's a bad thing, that we're frustrated. Oh my God, it's creating anger. And then you get more into it because it's a very potent feeling, especially if you've never really sat with it before, or you've never acknowledged that maybe it needs your attention. So, yeah.
Well, I feel like in today's society, we've kind of become trained to want to be rid of negative feeling emotions.
Yeah. She says that in the book as
yeah.
well.
So we're not really taught to acknowledge anger, frustration, sadness, depression.
Take a pill or get rid of it.
Yeah.
Distract yourself. Don't think about it.
Yeah.
Just think of something positive.
Yeah.
Don't deal with it. Just think of something positive.
And I think because people also, you think about expressing anger and you think about punching somebody, or the images come to mind because when you see on the news or you see somewhere in whatever media platform or something, someone expressing anger, usually it's like screaming and punching and just being violent.
Yeah.
But anger doesn't have to be expressed violently necessarily. No. It can literally, if you need to physically express, then that's totally fine, provided you're not impacting somebody else. But you can also, I know for me, if a burst of anger's come up in me, a lot of the time you just see, you go, okay, this is anger that's coming up, and you just go, okay, anger, and just sit with that anger for a second.
Yeah. And if you do need to let it out, and if you do need to scream and just do it, if it's a safe space, obviously, if it's appropriate. But also, I think I know it's only been a few days, but I feel when emotions come up now, like even of sadness, I can feel them, but they don't make me cry every time. I don't cry every time now, every time I think of sadness, where I was so connected and attached to it. Whereas every time I thought of something sad, I would explode into tears. Whereas now I can feel it and I see it and I'm connecting with it, but I don't necessarily have to cry.
Yeah.
But other times things that are maybe very traumatic and I need to let go, and I've been holding them for so long, it does require tears, and it does require that just expression of just release.
It's really like cleansing yourself, isn't it?
It's
like all this stuff's just sitting in there and it's been building up for 29 years. And it's not until now when you've actually started to go, okay, you know what? No, I'm ready to acknowledge these for what they are and experience them.
Because it's the only thing that's holding me back.
And when they start coming up, then you can also follow them back down to where they've come from too. And I think that's what you were doing as well.
Yeah.
Like, what's the source of this block? I'm blocked, and I'm feeling anger and frustration and sadness and guilt and shame at the existence of this block. But then, you know, because you can identify that there's a block there and that's sort of the source of these extra emotions, you can follow them back down and go, okay, where's this block come from? And then as soon as you open that door, like you did, then all of a sudden your eyes are opened to this entire, like, history of you that you weren't even aware of up until that point in time, because it had fallen into your subconscious.
And I was just floating through life. Like, I wasn't grounded at all. Although it might have seemed that I knew who I was, I loved dancing and expressing myself, and everyone would have said, you know, you were so creative and you were the life of the party. I was very lost, and I was only holding on to things that people saw me as, and I knew that that was a positive, so I held on to it. And the identity, I mean, like, thinking back, I actually kind of, it did make me sad, because although I seemed happy on the surface, I realized how lost I actually really was. And it wasn't anyone's fault. It's just like rewatching my life. I didn't have direction. I didn't know how to ask the question. I didn't know that I was lost. I tried to do the best that I could with what I had, but it was always at the expense of my satisfaction. I always did things for other people. This is just how I functioned.
Yeah.
And I really cared about what other people thought of me. That's why I was very self-conscious as a girl and as a female, or as a woman, sorry. And I was very self-conscious about everything, because I thought that everyone else knew better. Everyone else could do things better. And I kind of just... It's so weird just to think that that's...
Do you think waiting, when you had a spark of inspiration and you were to go forward, were you waiting for someone to take it over from you? So when you would carry this idea to a certain point and then someone else would take it, so that it no longer was yours. And then that helped maybe put a block in place, so that every time you experience something like that, you'd get to a certain point and then you'd expect someone else to take it over for you, or you wouldn't go on with it.
I haven't thought about it that way. Because it got too hard, like supposedly hard. Is that what you mean? Or
potentially, or maybe you just had something that you created, or something that you were trying out, or an idea that you were expressing, or you were sort of trying to, talking about expression again and creativity, and you were allowing your curiosity to display for you, like the what you could do with that. And maybe it was only one experience, but someone else came along and took that idea and ran with it for them, and sort of you felt like it was taken away from you. And so from that point, maybe if you had other experiences which were going along that same thing, where you had inspiration or your curiosity had taken you to a certain point,
I would just give it away.
Then you'd wait for someone else to kind of take it, but you wouldn't know that that's what you were waiting for. Or you knew there was a block there and you were no longer inspired to continue going.
Yeah. Because it was gone, usually.
I know, it's happened, even since we've been together, it's happened multiple times.
And it drives me crazy. And I'm like, this is not happening again. I refuse for it to happen again. Like, and I know that there's so many things that I left unfinished, and I want to get back to them, but I can't get back to them unless I figure out what this is. And I have, and I'm still working on it. There's still more that I have to do. But I know that I always knew that one day I'll come back to it, which is...
Come back to what?
Just some of the inspirations that I had, and the ideas that I had for
course,
creating stuff, or stories. That story that I had that I created at uni, that was a whole another experience for another episode. But that's an interesting... I guess that's a way to look at it. See if someone came along and...
It's like maybe it was just something that happened once, and it was just sort of held by your subconscious for you ever since. And then every time...
Well, the thing is, that's what it is. And it's like, I don't want to get too hung up on what it was, but I do want to know what it is, so I can move it aside and just step into that fullness of me, because I'm not whole at the moment, and I don't think I ever have been. I think I've been too scared to really express who I was and what I really believed and what I really thought. And I was very quiet. I kept to myself, and I was pleasing people and making sure that everyone liked me, because
you probably didn't even know what you really thought.
I had no idea. Yeah, that's it.
So
I didn't even know how to think like that.
Yeah.
It's just now that I'm saying that that's probably what was happening. But yeah, I like thinking back to just putting myself into those shoes, even as like a 7-year-old, and just going to school and I just was fluttering, just doing what other people were telling me, what the teachers were telling me. I had to be picked up at a certain time. I had to be dropped off at a certain time. I was living on a schedule, and that's
someone else's schedule.
Someone else's schedule. It wasn't mine. But I didn't know how to create my own. I didn't even know if that was possible. I just thought that's what happened. That's why I thought when I'm so excited to grow up, because someone's going to tell me what I'm really good at, and then I'm going to be told what I'm doing and what I do.
Yeah.
And then I grew up, and I was like, well, where's that person that's supposed to tell me who I am?
That's the important thing. That's what's so crucial about asking these questions.
Yeah.
And it's not something that's like just to make you feel more high and mighty. It's because it helps you open up your possibilities. It helps you get to know yourself a little bit better. But it also, how would you know what your possibilities were if you never asked questions? Because if you never ask questions or read any books or listened to certain things and that just change it, that open up your worldview a little bit, you wouldn't know what is possible for you. You wouldn't know what's out there that you can actually do. Because that's the thing, when you engage with someone else's creativity and you go, I love that they've done that. You know, if you're looking for inspiration, you'll go and see what someone else has done so that you can actually know what you can actually do with that medium.
Yeah.
So if you never actually did that research in the first place, you wouldn't know if someone was to put alcohol in front of you and say, here you go, make something. You wouldn't know what was possible to do with it.
Yeah, no.
So what's the first thing you do? You go and get inspiration from what other people have done with it. And
then use that as inspiration to see what you
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's what asking these questions is about. That's why when you have these moments where you go, oh, fuck, I don't know who I am. Like, what am I? Who am I? You know, it's that moment is when you can start to see and comprehend what is possible out there and what's possible for you.
Yeah.
And your perspective.
That's what was really difficult, because now I'm thinking, okay, the only way that I'm going to make an Enerhia happen if I know what the values and beliefs are of an Enerhia. But I'm like, without knowing my own values and beliefs and knowing who I am and where I want to go as me, then I can't make this happen, because I'm already like with that idea of an Enerhia. I'm trying to. I wouldn't. Had I not had this philosophical moment of understanding that it is important for me to have direction, I would have put my identity in an Enerhia, and I would have followed an Enerhia's beliefs and values and foundation rather than develop my own.
Right.
So I put the responsibility in something else so that it can create, and what might sound nice, what I should be doing, what an Enerhia should look like.
Wow.
This is a really big, this is just came to me. So.
Yeah, let's follow this train.
So I think maybe that's what I did with an Enerhia, or I'm doing with an Enerhia maybe. That's the original inspiration, is actually giving away my identity or giving my responsibility and actually doing the work myself to something else. So I can just like start with a clean slate, and I don't have to worry about my history or what happened.
So it's like you're splicing yourself, and you're putting like this ideal version of yourself into the business.
Yeah.
And so that you physically don't actually have to do any of the work. You can just do the work for the business.
For a business.
Wow. That's like the reflection thing, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, I'm just having a moment.
That's crazy. That makes sense.
It does make sense.
Because
I didn't know there was something about this, and I'm like, what is this? What is stopping me? Because we have this massive vision for Enerhia.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I can't get there. Because I'm creating a reason to get there, but it's not really what I want. Because it doesn't align with me, with who I am and what I'm doing and what I really... So at the moment I'm finding out who is Yuzha, but what is it? Like, what is my purpose? Where do I actually want to go? What is my direction? What am I actually curious about? Not like that I'm curious about everything, but what am I particularly curious about? What questions do I want to ask? What questions do I want to know the answer to? Because I don't know how to ask questions very well, because I've never known what I've wanted to know about a topic. That's why when teachers were like, any questions? I'm like, well, no, I just trust that you've just told me what I need to know.
Yeah.
Like I didn't even know how to think about asking questions. So it's like before even the asking questions, I wasn't even functioning in a way to like know that there was something else that I could know about what they've told me. Oh God, this is what was happening on Monday. But it was just me, and I couldn't. Yeah,
this is just a real moment of authenticity. I mean, it's all of our podcasts are authentic, but this is a real
aha moment.
Yeah,
but like more of an aha moment than.
Because Enerhia isn't a product. Like, it's not something that we're going to produce something and then give it to you as a hard product. It's more of a service. That's the sort of aim that you're looking at taking it, and that I'm looking at trying to be involved in. And so, because it's a service that we're delivering, you need to understand the philosophy of the service. Because if you've got a product to give, then there's a reason that product is needed. And so you use that reason as the fundamentals for how you produce it and why you produce it. But when it's a service like what you're wanting to do, you don't have that necessarily hard, tangible process for producing it and sort of what it's going to look like, because it has a function to fill. Yeah. It's like a service is more intangible kind of thing. Like when I sort of think about it, like if you go to an osteo, you can't and get like a physical, like a manual therapeutic treatment. You know, that's kind of the service that they're providing, but that is sort of shaped by the particular osteo. So if you, every osteo is going to operate or is going to perform the same techniques the same way. Everyone's sort of shaped by their own unique experience and what they're good at. Whereas with a product, if you need a pair of earphones or something, they all look roughly the same. You've got headphones, you know, they go over your head and they have the bits that go over your ears, and, you know, they have different companies put different spins on sort of styling and that, but generally you're looking at the same product. Whereas, if you're receiving a service from someone, that service is going to be shaped by their own personal experience. And so that's the thing with Enerhia, I think, that you've had to come to terms with, is that you're providing a service with this, but you need to kind of know your experience. What of you are you going to put into the service? And because you haven't necessarily known that up until this point in time, it's been difficult for you to be able to produce or plan what you're going to provide. Yeah. And so I think that's been a really crucial part this week for you to be able to start to understand that. Yeah. Because now it's going to give you a clearer idea of how you want to shape the business and how you can go forward with it being a reflection of your philosophy. That's it. Not you projecting what you think you should be doing and then your philosophy being ruled by what is happening with Enerhia.
Because I always, every time I delve into an idea, or when I get inspiration from anywhere, the first question that I do ask is, how can I make this my own? But without really understanding or comprehending what I like and what I'm about, I can't do that. And really delving into, like, what experience have I had that I can, even with theatre, I love it, but I'm still trying to do it by the book. I want to explore, like, I don't use it like the way it is in the book. I use it the way I intuitively connect with it. You know, when we're sitting at any point in time and you say, let's do theatre, something else happens, and it's that flow, and that's what I want with Enerhia. But I'm curious about other energy mediums, and I want to intertwine them and make them my own, because I have my belief in energy is a lot greater than just that spiritual side. Yeah. I do believe that there's a physical connection somewhere with this, and I want to understand that better. And I know that now because I'm noticing what is it specifically that I want to know about energy and our human bodies, and what, you know, all the electricity that goes through us, and how we're connected to the earth, and why the sun gives us energy, and what all these, do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like these things that just naturally happen, and why we flow naturally with the cycle of the day and the month and the year and the seasons, and like there's something bigger happening, and I want to understand that. And it's a slow process, but I'm slowing it down because now I can hear and see what I'm genuinely interested in. And I'm like, I want to know that function. Like, what is it about our physical space that connects with the spiritual realm? Whereas before, I was all just up in the spiritual, because I'm like, no, I'm not a human, I'm a spirit. and there was no connection. No wonder I was floating.
Yeah.
Because I was literally on another planet, probably.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people used to tell me that, like, you're just somewhere else, aren't you? You're just on you're on another planet. Or
It's so true, because when I was getting into the spirituality stuff and reading and hearing people's stories about meditating and going off and experiencing different things, and then always, monks being sort of in solitude and living in that sort of isolation and trying and constantly strengthening their connection with the divine. I think that's great for you, because I believe that everyone should be able to do what it is that they want to do, provided it doesn't impede on somebody else doing what it is that they want to do. You should have whatever freedom you want to explore.
Yeah.
So that's what my belief. So I'm not going to knock somebody else for doing that, because they're doing what's necessary for them and what they think is right. It's not. I don't know what's right for me or everybody. Yeah. I know what's right for me better than somebody else does.
Yeah.
So So going just with that sort of principle. Fantastic for the monk. But for me, my belief is that we are spirits in essence. We are energy in our essence, and that energy has manifested a human being into this physical world. And everything in this physical world is manifested from an underlying energy source in the same way. And that's how we are all connecting and perceiving things in this physical realm. But there's an underlying something that has all sprung from.
Did you learn that through
through reading, but then I sort of adapted it so that I could make sense to me. So if I was to have a conversation with someone about it, I'd better be able to actually convey the idea, because I'm not having to rely on somebody else's words. I go, well, I have my understanding of it, and that's how I can convey. That's what I can convey to you.
Yeah.
So that's sort of what I've come to sort of think.
Have you always been that way inclined?
Yeah. Well, Mum gave me a really big compliment last night without meaning to. We were having a heated discussion about something political, and she told me that I've been controversial since I was 9 months old, and I need to stop. And I took that as a massive compliment. I'm like, thank you. I didn't say thank you like that. I just let it sort of be there. But it warmed me to hear that, because I'm like, no, it's good, because I ask why. Yeah. Because I don't just say, oh, that's fantastic. You've said something, and like, I agree with that because you've said it. And I've never really been like that or done that.
No, you haven't.
So now I'm finding my own way to explore that and to express that. So I've always had the inclination to be like that, but I've never until more recently understood how to harness it.
Yeah, right.
And make it sort of my own.
Yeah.
Where was I going with that? Everything. Yes, right. So I think that we are in essence spirits, or we are souls living a human existence, and so it's good to be connected and to ground yourself in that. But the purpose of the soul manifesting a human being is so that we can experience a human existence. So, as much as it's good to acknowledge and recognize and try and be as one with the divine as possible, if it is to exist, then as good as that is to be able to do that, we're also here to be humans. And that's being the ultimate purpose, is to experience what comes with being a human. I feel like it does defeat the purpose to spend your entire life just saying I'm a spirit. It doesn't matter what happens here because I'm a soul and yada, yada, yada. I'm on this plane so that I can experience everything. So I want to be a human. I acknowledge that I'm a soul, or I'm manifested from an energy source, but I can meditate and connect with it a bit more, because it'll help me with my human experience. It'll help me maybe with my decision making, or with ideas, or using my imagination or my creativity, or following my inspiration. It'll just help me connect better with myself, I think. And it will just enhance my human life. But that's the point. The point is to live a human life, not to live as a human trying to get back to being a spirit.
Yeah.
Because
you're here for a reason.
I'm here for a reason, so I need to be here.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really important thing to ground yourself in that, but also use just that grounding to live the most full human life and enjoy the spoils that come with a human existence.
Yeah. Because once you are grounded, like I've found especially the last few days, and I've been doing this grounding exercise that she provides in the book, and now I just do it. I connect, and it honestly just I don't know what, it's amazing the power of it. Even just imagining a cord coming like from you, the light of you going down to the core of the earth and just plugging into the like energy in the energy source, like what you would do with an appliance, to charge it, to ground it so that it works.
Yeah.
And I love that because I now have that in my head, and because I need a visual.
That's an awesome visual. I like that visual.
And now that I have that visual in my head, I now know exactly what I need to do. I just imagine myself plugging into the core, whatever it is, just plugging in. And it's awesome because I don't know what it's amazing how it just freaking works, and I'm just centered, or I'm more aware, more conscious of what's going on. I'm listening, I'm more intent, like I'm intently listening.
Yep.
And things come to me, and I'm listening and separating myself, and emotions come up, and it's only been 2 days, but I want change. I want to be grounded. I want to know how to manage this human life, and regardless of what emotion comes my way, whatever external situation happens, I want to be grounded and know exactly what I need to do. So I know what direction to go into, so I know exactly what questions to ask, so that I can know. I'm like, okay, this is what I need to know, and this is what I need from this situation in order to move to the next one. I don't think it's getting over anything. It's getting through something and understanding what it is that's happening. I think when we have understanding of the situation that we're in, that's the biggest growth.
Because when you understand it, you provide the new benchmark.
Yeah.
So that's that, because now you have an understanding of something, then you kind of, it gives you, you get footing on a new platform. So where, you were once like sort of, waiting around trying to make sense of what's going on.
Floating.
Once you can sort of get some sort of understanding about your environment and about your experience, and you can start to get some kind of logical flow and draw conclusions and tie some things together for yourself and have an understanding of what's going on, then instead of waiting, you all of a sudden have a stronger platform to stand on. So you're no longer floundering. You're just standing there and you're like, okay, now I'm actually in a stronger, more balanced position to look around me and to go, okay, I'm interested in exploring this part. What's going on over here? And then you can go over there. And then again, you might find yourself wading out somewhere deep, or you'll go up a mountain or something, and you'll find yourself floundering just in a new place. Yeah. And so once you stop and you assess that situation and you allow it to sort of flow through you, like the emotions that you're experiencing and what's happening in your context, when you can make a bit of sense of that, then that gives you a new base, and then you can continue going higher and higher and higher from a new platform. I think that's, like really, really crucial as well. And that's what's sort of important. I think even on that though, like I do definitely want to note still that I feel like you still have to be open to the idea that even if you've solidified something in your head for how you operate or how the world operates, then you still have to be open to the idea that you could be wrong, or that there is a different way or a better way of looking at it that you just haven't discovered yet. And remaining humble to just that, so that that's
part of the process. Though it's not like knowing exactly where you're going, exactly your purpose, because your purpose in your mind at this point in time might look in a specific way, whereas it could mean the same thing, but it could actually be different. And it is being open. But what the grounding does is allows you to not just ignorantly just push through these stuff and just be like, yep, okay, emotion gone, this is where I'm going, and that's just how it's going to be, that's where I'm going. For me, it doesn't, like I like the magic of not knowing. I like the unknown, which is ironic because that's the one that supposedly scares me the most, but But I think that you do need to be okay with being in that unknown and the things that might happen, or even things that might just surprise you. I also don't like surprise parties. So, but
that comes, when something new comes into your life that you didn't know that was going to happen. You have to adapt to it. Yeah. You have to change and adapt to it, because if you can predict everything, then you can prepare yourself accordingly, and you never have to do anything.
I feel like it just gets boring if you know exactly what's going to happen. Yeah. I get bored very easily. I didn't realise that I get bored very easily. Even around the house, like I had to change the room around because I was like, I don't want to sit here anymore. Yeah. It's got stagnant. And I mean, we can't really move everything around the whole house, but as long as there's some sort of change, it actually, I was like, now I feel better for some reason. There's a bit of a shift or a bit of a shake happening. Yeah.
You just change your environment that little bit. And it's just even changing your physical environment like that can just help refresh your mental environment. It's just another
way to do it,
Yeah, definitely. It's also interesting. I just wanted to say, just quickly, because I know there's definitely people in my life that are set in their ways. And it's difficult because when you start, I know when I come along and start asking questions or provoking sort of ideas that are either contrary to what they think or maybe just goes a bit deeper on what they think to the foundation of where they're coming from, do get really uncomfortable. And it's something that I have to be like, okay, I need to be able to know when to back away from that, because I can get really passionate because I know the importance for me of doing that. So when I'm trying to do that with somebody else, and I need to become better at recognizing and acknowledging that that's what's happening, and I need to let them be, and just be okay with the fact that it might be a seed or it just might not be needed. They might not want it. But I do just even think on that, people, when talk about the platform thing and building up platforms and platforms, when you get an idea of how something works and you become okay with that, then you move on to the next thing, and then in moving on to the next thing, you solidify and accept the conclusion that you've already drawn and go, okay, that's that. Now, how can I make sense of this? Okay, that's that. Now, how can I move on?
Sure.
And what you do is you solidify then your ideas or the concepts that you hold on to about how your world works and how everything functions. And then so when I come along and start to ask questions or poke holes or to, apply my experience and my point of view to that logic that they've used, it's very uncomfortable because it starts to completely undermine, what they've built themselves on. Because I think that there's potentially, if we just strip ourselves bare to just the fundamentals of where organisms on this planet trying to survive, we're fighting for survival and to reproduce and, regenerate and be here for as long as we can, then, if you've gotten to a certain point or to a certain age, then you must have done something right. The way that you've lived your life or the way that you've philosophized about how things work, if you've been done into that, whatever, that must be the way that it is because it's gotten you this far. And so why change something if it's not broken? If it works, exactly. So, if you have this idea of this is all I need to do to get by. I don't need to think anything deeper. I don't need to think anything else because it's worked for me up to this point because I'm not dead.
Yeah.
So I must have done something right. And then so when something comes along that, or someone says something that kind of challenges you to think a bit deeper, you get really uncomfortable. It's like, I don't need to. I don't need to think deeper about this. And I know there's definitely people, I've had these sort of conversations with individuals in my life, and that's sort of the way that they look at it. I don't need to think deeper because I've already figured out what I need to figure out to get by.
Does that bother you? Initially.
Yeah, it does bother me. But again, it's something that I have to work with. I have an enthusiasm and a passion for this sort of stuff. And that's why I think it bothers me, because it triggers that passion. But again, part of that is I also understand that I don't have it right. And I'm also 25. I'm also very young. I've got a lot of life left to live and a lot of these things left to learn. And who's to say that by the time I'm 15 years older, I won't be in the exact same place?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just because I'm young and I have this kind of enthusiasm. Maybe that'll peter out by the time I'm that age.
It's exciting to be a part of, I must say.
So yeah, I can... It bothers me if I let it, but if I can be humble and conscious enough of what's going on, then I can go, no, it's okay, because I don't, what they're doing is right for them and what I'm doing is right for me. And so it's just being aware that there's just a couple of different points of view. And so I just wanted to put that in there, especially in light of the conversation we had. I love it. It's fascinating and I am really passionate about it.
Yeah.
And I'm really super glad that you got to have that experience, because I feel like maybe you can relate to me a little bit better.
I've always related to you, I think. But the thing is, I always knew that I had to ask these questions, even before you. I knew there was something and I had to sit down. But again, I just didn't know how to. It wasn't time yet. And I knew that I wasn't ready to face what I was... If I had tried a year ago when you were writing your book and when you were in that space, I don't know how I would have taken it. One, because it was the start of 2020 and a lot of uncertainty, not knowing that 2021 was even an option for anyone. So I think that it was safer for me to experience 2020 without having those questions, because it was hard enough.
Yeah.
But now that I've pushed through, and it doesn't mean that I used my 2020 as a as kind of a, like, just to buy me time, I still really worked on myself. I still tried to make things happen. I still tried to push through that creative barrier, and I did things and I tried, and it was good because it just made me, it solidified that, you know what, there actually is something here that you need to work on, that you need to deal with. Because I wanted this so badly. It was something that I knew that was my future. That was a big part of my future. And I needed to know that, like, to on a particular level.
You had to go through. You just had to experience.
I just had to experience it,
and especially because, like, the block that you kept coming. That's what helped you go back and realize, and that was sort of the source of this awakening for you.
Yeah.
And you needed to experience all the creative adventures you tried to go on, and then hit that block. You needed to get those blocks. Because when you look back on it now, you go, oh, I had all those blocks.
Yeah.
Because you had the experience, you had to experience those blocks in 2020 so that you could have the realization now that there were all those blocks. So that you could then use that as the...
And see it for what it was. So I wasn't actually going crazy. It was actually a thing that was happening. Because I was so excited. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm getting more and more excited. I'm getting further and further, like, into the curiosity, into the inspiration. And it's like I was pushing the sign just further, but I wasn't actually moving the sign.
Yeah, you were just keeping it. You're keeping it in front of you going forward.
Yeah, I was just like holding it. I'm like, I'm doing it. Whereas I'm on a treadmill and it's actually not going to.
That's so true. I love it. Oh, that was a really big realization just before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Epic.
I have to. We'll talk a little bit more of that off
air.
Podcast. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down and spending this time. That was a really enjoyable conversation.
It was. Thank you. Thank you, my love.